Linda Addison, who's another local attorney here, her parents were Holocaust victims. They were in Poland. And she said she realized how important the law was and how important it was for the law not to be corrupted and to provide social justice. And she said that had a lot to do with my going into law. You always had those whose fathers were lawyers. Carol Dinkins is one whose father was a lawyer, and that's how she says she was inspired to do it. Melinda Harmon, who is now a federal judge here in Houston, said she wanted to be always wanted to be a trial judge. Well, that was the very thing the women were discouraged against. There was a real struggle if they wanted to litigate, because going into court, even after they were allowed to practice law, they weren't sure, the legal profession wasn't sure they wanted women in the courtroom because they felt like that might tone things down, or women were too emotional. They were not going to be able to hold their own. And of course, with time, that was proved not to be true. But that was another struggle that they had to do. Okay, I want to just tell you one more thing real quickly that had to do with Hortense Ward. We haven't talked about judges much, and judges were slow to come about for women, and yet in 1925 we had an all-female Supreme Court in Texas to hear one case that had to do with the woodmen of the world, and Governor Patton F. tried to find 3 women who could sit on the court. They had to have practiced for 7 years, and he had a hard time finding 7 in 1925. But he finally did, and the Chief Justice of that one case was Hortense Ward, who was our Houston attorney. They were sometimes called the Petticoat Court because they were women, but they did a very good job. Hortense Ward wrote, now I'm losing my mind, what is it you write? The opinion. Hortense Ward wrote the opinion, and it has been cited several times since when there was need for it. So you would have thought, okay, 1925, 3 women sitting on the Supreme Court. We'll have women judges all the time. The next woman on the Texas Supreme Court was 1982, and she was appointed. It was Ruby Sondock, who was a Houston woman. She was appointed to fill a vacancy, and so we went all those years without one on the Supreme Court, and actually went a lot of years. Sarah Hughes, who is a well-known name, a Dallas attorney, was the first woman to be a judge in Texas, a state district judge in 1935, before women could sit on juries, and she often would say, I'm a judge and I can't sit on a jury because I'm a woman. Women were not allowed to sit on juries in Texas until 1954. We were one of the last states in the country to allow women to do that. But with time, women did begin to become judges, and I just looked today to kind of get a count on what we have here by way of judges in our own area, and about a half of our state judges in Harris County, in the civil and the criminal and the juvenile and the probate, about half of them are women. Half of the population, a little bit over half of the population is female, but that is a huge increase. So in the judicial area, it is an area that women, I think, have made great strides in being able to do that. We've had Gabrielle McDonald, who was an African-American judge in the 1970s, who was a federal judge. Carolyn Deneen King was a Houston attorney who was named to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and was the first woman to ever serve as Chief Justice, and the Chief Justice there is a former neighbor of mine. Edith Jones lived down the street from me, and she was practicing then with Andrews Kurth, and I always thought it was so interesting that Woody did all the pushing of the children in the strollers. Well, I now know what Edith was doing. She was at the office practicing law. I didn't know much about what was going on back then with women lawyers, but she did become, is the Chief Justice of the Fifth Circuit today. So I'll just close with a couple of stories. One was, there is a federal judge here called Vanessa Gilmore, and she was doing a tour of children at the courthouse. And I think she said they were 3rd and 4th graders. And she said they had judges' pictures up and said, one of the children finally held up his hand and said, why are they all old white men? And she said he was very serious with his questions. So I answered him very seriously. And I said, that is because in the past, that is who mostly have been judges. But someday, your picture might be up there. And you could be a judge, because anybody can become a judge with the right kind of training and success in the legal field. But that was interesting that, you know, this child didn't see anything up there, and that, of course, is what we had for many, many years. But women have made tremendous strides since 1900, but they will tell you there's still some things that can be done. So maybe 100 years from now, somebody will want to, maybe there'll be a committee, Ellen, and they'll say, all right, we're going to take it from 2000 forward and see what has happened to women and see how many have actually become managing partners of firms, law school deans, places we haven't yet found women in many of the high places, higher places. But that will happen too. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And so, as I said, this was just probably the most interesting research I have ever done at all. If any of you are interested in a book, you have to get it through the state bar. That is the only way that they chose to do the book. This is it. The cover of it has the 1925 all-female court on it. And I think Ellen even said she had some sheets, some forms, if anybody is so interested in one, or you can go online if you're interested in it. Maybe one of these days we'll get it online. I don't know. Anyway, but I very much enjoyed being here.